This week, we welcome Ben Wilcox, CTO and CISO at ProArch, to discuss speaking the language of the board, measurable strategic AI-ready security. In the leadership and communication segment, only 30 minutes per quarter on cyber risk, why CISO-Board conversations are falling short. When the team gets the recognition your leadership is working, the communication lesson that changed my career, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER. Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default denied execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's Zero Trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 439, recorded March 16th, 2026. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Yes, I made it back from London. Whew, what a trip. Joining me for this interview segment are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Matt. Well, since there's no NFL to talk about, I'll talk about kids' sports. My son, as listeners know, has been a longtime soccer player. And he was asked to actually play up 2 levels higher than he would normally play.
Wow.
And he helped the team win a tournament that we had up in Massachusetts over the weekend. So 3 games over the weekend, win. And he played the entire time started. So,
nice.
Good for him.
Yeah, very good for him. Now, there is football news, Jason. This is a bunch of trading and free
just
agency.
a bunch of trades going on,
Right. Also joining me today, Miss Summer Fowler. Hey, Summer, how you doing?
Hey, and come on, the football news is that the draft is going to be in Pittsburgh. Super exciting. So that's coming up and is going to make the city nuts. But I'll join you with kid sport news. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but my son, who's 15, is going to be playing for a national team, Team USA, in ball hockey in Slovakia this summer. And if anyone has ever been in the mountains of Slovakia, I've heard that it's an incredible tournament. So please send me your recommendations for anything we should see or do.
So my wife is Slovak, her mother is Slovak. She's been to Slovakia multiple times. I'm going to have to go get some tips from her. I'll send them to you later.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. One quick announcement. We'll get into it. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC 2026 conferences next week in San Francisco. Register using our discount code by visiting securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5SecWeekly. We'll be in Broadcast Alley, booth number 5. Come see us. We'll be there all week. Ben Wilcox is the Chief Information Security Officer and Chief Technology Officer at ProArch, where he leads enterprise cybersecurity strategy, cloud security architecture, and AI governance initiatives. He works with organizations navigating hybrid and multi-cloud environments, helping them reduce risk, strengthen resilience, and securely enable AI adoption. He focuses on translating board-level risk conversations into practical security controls that balance innovation with protection. Ben, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you guys for having me on today.
So we're going to talk board metrics, and we talk about this topic a lot, Ben. I warned you on our pre-call, like watch what you say, because we talk about this a lot. So we know the challenges. We're going to cover this in an article in the next segment. Like you get 30 minutes a quarter with the board, and it's not enough, and we're still giving them metrics that don't make any sense to them. So talk to us a little bit about where your clients are struggling and kind of what you're seeing they need to be doing to address this issue.
Yeah. So one of the key things, and this has been escalating, I think, right? The ability to translate that detail to something operational isn't something new, right? Boards have been struggling with this for a long time. And CISOs have, had that challenge delivering it. We just really do need to get to that better business translation. So one of the things, like, for example, right, there's a lot of economic volatility happening today. Boards are thinking about the AI governance. They have the cyber risk. They have supply chain things, right? There's all of these things that are kind of bubbling up and taking time and pressure from them. And cyber is still on the agenda, but it's only getting smaller. And I think that window of time that we're allowed to present the cyber story is getting smaller. So for me, it's really about getting it, speaking that language of what the board's looking at today, right? Which is resiliency at this moment, operational resiliency, and all those other things that are part of their day-to-day considerations are taking that time away. So we got to be really concise when we get to it.
So Ben, let's dig into that a little bit, because there's business capital out there that needs to be acquired, right? So every minute, every dollar that another department gets is potential takeaway from the CISO, right? So we're fighting for that time. If we're lucky, we get 30 minutes in front of the board, if we're lucky. So how do we make the case to differentiate cybersecurity as a business enabler to be able to maximize the amount of time we get with leaders and with the board, the amount of investment we get, and hey, by the way, the amount of influence we get, right? You were talking about resilience a little bit. Let's dig into that a little bit. What are some of the conversations CISO should be having? Planting seeds with the board and the executives, right? Because I don't think the time that we have with the board is just 30 minutes or 15 minutes. We should be doing things in advance. So what are some of those things?
Yeah. So one of the most common things that I see, especially with customers, and even frankly, I've seen it in the past, that is that you treat it as an event, right? Versus this is a relationship and something that you really need to prepare for, right? This isn't a one-time event that happens quarterly, right? You got to be able to get really well prepared ahead of it. And you also have to build some alliances. So if we start at the very beginning, right, you need to build an alliance with the CFO, build an alliance with the CEO. Like these other relationships, outside of just the typical board side of it, are really important. That way you can start building your case earlier on, and also have their alliance during the meeting, right? They'll make sure that you get heard first, moving directly on to the next topic. So that's first off. I think the other big challenge here is, right, we want to speak technical, and the board is not going to understand that side of it, nor do they even care, right? So we got to stop leading with those threat counts or tool names or patch metrics, right? No one's going to allocate you capital based on your technical activity that your teams are actually doing. Those are important for you, but we really need to allocate those against, right, business exposure, that resilience, and what those types of returns are. I think those are the two pieces to begin with there.
That's a really good point, Ben. And I guess I hate the types of questions that are like, if you only had 3 metrics that you could show, what would they be? But I'm going to ask you something similar. If you only had 1 to 3 messages to convey, what would those messages be so that we can then determine the right metrics?
Well, I would start with, I think risk is super important, right? That's what we all start with when we're talking about cyber. We need to convey the risk. So I think we need to convey the risk in different ways, though, right? What is the risk? What is the impact to that risk? How do we mitigate that risk? and what is my ask to the board for this, right? Because I don't want to just be presenting something, right? I have an opportunity at this point to try to secure some, additional funding, right, to get things done. So if I'm leading with those things, right, I'm building my case or my arc across this to try to get to that outcome where they understand where that risk is, and then they can make a decision, right? Is this something that I really want to move forward with? And sometimes we start off, and I've seen this before, right? We try to jump right to that maturity piece where we can present, right? Here's the exact numbers, right? That this is going to be, right? We don't have to start there, and we can start at something that's much closer to just estimates, right? And I think if we take that step instead of trying to jump too far ahead, and present like in your next board meeting, right? Let's look at the top threats to your business and explain them in human language, right? That's not technical, right? Like, we don't have to dive through that, but explain what the risk is in a non-technical way. The boards are going to start understanding that a little bit better.
So Ben, I love the fact that you are a CTO as well as a CISO. I'm a chief operating officer and a CISO, right? So there's a natural conflict there, right?
Oh yes,
CTOs are built for speed. CTOs are built for speed. Chief operating officers want effective, efficient processes within the organization, all striving for the same thing, revenue and EBITDA and things of that nature, right? But there's this go-to-market conflict that you're going to have. So how do you define, let's say, a risk-adjusted release or a risk-adjusted go-to-market where you can have conversations with leaders and say, if we go now, here's the risk. If we go later, here's the risk, because timing matters, right?
It does.
So how do you rectify that? How do you have conversations with leaders or boards about timing versus risk?
So for me, that conflict occurs when I start feeling like that exact metric that you described, right? Where I'm being pressured to get something out the door. At the same time, I realize that it's not quite ready. And oftentimes I need to rely upon other team members to help kind of align my priorities with that. My priority is in both of these is business first. And that can mean different things in both of those roles. Sometimes I need to wear a little bit more of my CISO hat. If I had, for example, if ProArch was an organization that had deeper compliance obligations, I don't think this role would exist with dual hats for me. But I'm able to navigate it based off of the fact that we do security frameworks, and we're privately owned, and so we're able to kind of handle this side. But in a different role, I don't think that would necessarily be there. So my approach is leverage the team, right, to kind of balance that. But for me, I got to look at the business, what's right for the business in both lenses. And if one is outweighing the other, I'll typically push the business on the more secure side, right? Because that's generally where there's a cyber risk or some sort of bigger risk where the business is. Yeah, there's lost money, but there's also lost reputation, right? And we certainly don't want that reputation or that business impact that can come from that.
If you can effectively understand your risk posture, you can weigh the opportunity versus the risk side of the equation, right? And I think that's where a lot of CISOs struggle, is not having an understanding of the risk posture and the risk appetite of the organization. So when push comes to shove, you can't weigh those decisions, right? So I think that's a really important part, Ben, that we have to understand. And if we're using risk as the primary thought process through this, then I have to have a pretty good handle on my risk posture and know that how these go-to-market opportunities either sway me above that appetite or keeps me in line so I can actually make those decisions. Isn't it? That's part of the magic, right?
Yeah, it totally is. 100% agree on that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the challenge is you have to also be able to not just talk about the risk, which you are and you still are when you do this, but you have to be able to convey to the board that you're doing good things with the money that's already been allocated to you. And so do you have, and I know you don't want to, we should definitely not be diving into the tech stuff, like you mentioned, the threats, the vulnerabilities. That's not what we want to do. But Ben, what metrics have you seen that are effective in being able to convey, hey, I'm doing a really good job with the budget that you've given me, not you, but the budget that has been allocated to cybersecurity, and you want to be able to show that. What have you seen that's been effective for that?
Yeah, and I think that goes into like a cybersecurity like scorecard type of thing, right? Where you can show a metric like, let's say it's business recovery time, right? Or, it's associated with like, worst case scenarios, right? You could start with, for example, like where this started, right? Maybe your, RTO was originally 48 hours, right? And after numerous conversations and talking about business resiliency, right, and operational resiliency, right, you've been able to get it down into another number, right? That's less than that, right? Showing that over time, or if we think about, obviously like the fair type of computer calculations around, cost of a cyber outage, right? That's kind of hard to start with, right? To jump right to the point where you can start giving those types of metrics. But I think you can measure your cyber risk exposure, right? What's your cost of downtime if a ransomware incident happens? What does it cost for a business email compromise? Those types of events that occur to almost every single business, you can kind of calculate that up, right? And as you start implementing security controls that then start mitigating those risks, well, maybe you can start measuring those numbers down, right? So maybe it's not $20 million of exposure that we're at, right? It's $10 million of exposure. I also think when you start looking at like all the third parties that are out there, that's another good metric, right? How are you measuring your third party vendor risk? Right? Are you doing it manually today, right? And you could do this as a percentage of risk, right? Maybe it's, if you don't have nothing today, right, you're 100% at risk. And as you start working towards maturity, you can start gradually moving those down as you gather your list of all your vendors, you start doing your due diligence, you start making sure that you have the right legal terms and contractual obligations as part of that. And so, you can kind of present those types of things. So over time, right, every quarter, you can say, hey, look, last quarter I came here asking for this, right, this thing to help reduce identity compromises, right, associated with business email compromise. We had this sort of weighted risk percentage previously. Now we've made a change and we've drastically reduced that. So, right, showing that you have gotten some sort of return is important.
So you hit on it a little bit. You hinted toward it a little bit that boards care about dollars and cents at the end of the day. They want to know potential loss to EBITDA. That's ground zero, right? That's bottom line of what they want to know. And you had mentioned, we can calculate some of these items. I'm a firm believer that it takes a village when it comes to this, right? And I don't think a CISO should go in front of a board pitching any type of financial liability. I think you're going to partner up, right? So,
totally.
Talk a little bit about how you partner up with either other department heads or the CFO or maybe a head of risk and calculate the actual financial impact that security risks have.
So this is something we used to do in the consulting days. And, I've actually seen this kind of tick back up, business impact analysis, right? You take your key business systems and you kind of map it all out from a technical perspective. How are these things all interconnected, right? And you start discovering things, right? You discover that, hey, these critical systems rely upon one switch or whatever it is, right? Back then, that could cause an outage. Well, it turns out to add redundancy, right, whether it's from a switching perspective or the hosting systems, it's going to cause X, Y, Z. You then go back to the business and you say, well, if you weren't able to have this application, right, what is 1 day of downtime cost, right? And what are your expectations around recovery of this? You hear all these different things. Well, I can't, the business that uses it the most, I can't, live without this for more than, 15 minutes, right? Well, it turns out your recovery time is 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is. And, you start being able to then understand what the business requirements are around that. What's the criticality of those crown jewels that are part of it? What else is dependent upon those systems? You start kind of building out this matrix. Then you talk to the CFO and you say, well, you know what? If this business unit can't produce X, Y, Z, or, do this, right? What is the cost of the business at this point? And you can start actually putting those, actual outages to dollars. And now you have your financial baseline, right? If it's, hey, we're out of production for a week, right? And it costs us $10 million. Well, you know how critical those things are, right? And then you can start putting that to both, a business cost, but then you can also align it to what else do you have to consider in here, right? If you have a huge data loss, right? What are your contractual obligations around those things, right? And now you can start layering on, right? You're going to start going out to legal and asking questions around, right? What are my contractual obligations, right? I have all of these notification things that have to occur, or I have the state obligation around privacy policy, et cetera. And now we got to go have a law firm, and we got to go deal with PR, et cetera. Right, you can start building up those numbers, and I would just start really with figuring out what are the crown jewels in the business and building up some of that information on there.
You said, Ben, you said something interesting. We used to do BIAs. Have we lost the art of understanding what business impact is? Like, it's almost like a lost art. Like in the early days in my career, I remember doing these things often, right? The environment changes so fast. Are we forgetting that we have to go back and look at the potential impact of all these new systems we're deploying? Have we forgotten how to do that?
Oh, I think so. That certainly was a piece that I saw, whether it's a combination of both customers and busyness, but like post-COVID, I just have not seen that interest in understanding where the operational resiliency comes from in your business. A little bit, as I think business has gotten back to kind of looking at resiliency, maybe a little bit around governance that's kind of pushing it, and certainly I think AI is bringing up some questions around, right? If I have this system over here and something happens to it, what do I have there? But frankly, it has been a lost art, I think.
So I think part of it is that we've and Matt, I think you're really hitting on this. Instead of seeing it as, I think what we've done is we've started seeing it as a solo sport, the business impact, and saying, okay, go figure out what the business impact is, when really it's a team sport. You have to do the business impact across the entire business, and everyone should understand that. And though I was just last week in a meeting where I was with the CISO and some members of his executive team, and we were talking about the tabletop that they want to do for ransomware. And they were talking about getting prepped for some ransomware attacks and saying, should we, what should we do first? We were running through all of it. And I said, well, the very first thing you need to do is understand what is most important to your business. What is the most important? Like, what are the systems? Who are the people? What's the data? All of those things. And someone in the room actually said, okay, so once the CISO does that, then, and I said, no, stop the press. That is not his job. That is your job collectively as a team. And I think too many people think when they hear BIA or they hear any of that jargon, they think, okay, CISO, go figure out the business impact. And that's something that the executive team has to be doing together.
I think this is the big gap that exists today, right? Because if we're going to have a risk conversation at the board, risk is a combination of likelihood and impact. We've got a lot of likelihood. Like, look at every security system out there. It's looking at the likelihood of an attack based on vulnerabilities, exposures, et cetera. And what I keep saying is, yeah, but if we don't understand the impact side of the equation, then we can't really have a risk conversation. And Ben, you just said it. Yeah, we lost the art of impact. Like, then how do we have a risk conversation? We need both of those pieces to come to the board. So this was enlightening for me because I've been saying this for a while. Like, we know likelihood like crazy, but without the impact side, how are we effectively communicating the potential risk to the board? And it's the lack of understanding business impact, I think.
Here's the other challenge we have, though, guys. And Ben, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because it's something that I had on my list of questions. We're still seen as the productivity tax. We're still seen as the Department of No. Doing a BIA is friction. It's friction to the organization when they could be doing other things for their business units, right? So how do we start shedding the stigma of being this cost center that just brings friction to the table and really become the enabler of the organization, right? We have to shift how we're viewed in the organization. A BIA is friction. How do we change that? How do we change the stigma that we have?
Well, I think I'll give you my opinion on this, Jason, is that yes, you have to understand where the business risk is, right? And that's the board cares about that resiliency. So we have to do sometimes things that aren't fun or right take things away. On the other side, right, where we can say more yes to is if we get to a maturity where we can have well-defined controls that exist and easy to move methods for the business to implement the technology that they want to implement, right? So not saying you get free control of it, but hey, you want to go build an AI agent, right? Here's how you're going to do it, the ProArch way or whatever your business is, right? And getting to the point where you can say, this is the acceptable path for it, right? And making it easy to say yes in other ways versus necessarily sometimes when I think of the BIA, it's kind of critical at this point for any business to know how they're going to go down, right? I want to know that.
Oh, agreed. It's just being able to get the stakeholders on board to want to put the time in, right? That's where the challenge is going to be, because to Summer's point, it's going to take a team to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you said this earlier around suppliers. Am I doing it manually? Of course we're doing it manually if we're doing it at all. The same thing with the BIA, right? If we do it, we have to do it manually. What would be really interesting is how could we leverage some of the new capabilities to actually help us get through this a little more efficiently? Like if I think about where there's opportunities to improve, can we leverage some of these artificial intelligence capabilities to actually help answer some of these questions for us a little more effectively so we can get to that risk understanding easier without friction? I mean, we're still evolving in this space, but those are some of the opportunities, because if we could solve for that and really use some of these new capabilities to give us better inventory, give us better understanding of the interrelationship, help us map this back up to our critical applications and assets, impact will get a little easier, I think, but we're not quite there.
I love that idea, right? Can you have an agent go do some BIA for you, right? Right? Or maybe it's on the vendor analysis side, right? Understand what your vendors are, how, what is that dollar amount that's associated with client revenue with those vendors, right? That, we don't have good visibility into those subcontractors or whatever it is, right? If we start having data platforms that have access to more unstructured data as well as structured data, that's something that I think we can build models around.
Absolutely. We could build agents around that can interact with that data. That's the power of this agentic AI stuff, because we're playing with it a lot with some of our partners, Ben. And I'm telling you, the ability to use these agents to orchestrate and go get this data from different sources and do something interesting with it, I think there's some opportunities. So we'll have to come up with some new terminology, Summer, around, AI automated BIA something or other.
I'm ready. I'll have it, but I'll have it by the show that we do next.
Okay. Have in about 30 seconds. Use AI to give us some.
That's not as much fun.
Not as much fun. Ben, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Right now, with Tanium, IT and security teams complete patching programs in minutes, not weeks. Reduce software vulnerabilities by up to 97%. Cut incident response times by up to 99%. This is not just IT, this is autonomous IT. Making business, your business, unstoppable. Tanium, autonomous IT, unstoppable business. See more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. So, of course, as we get into articles, the first article is based off the last session.
That's right.
Only 30 minutes per quarter on cyber risk, why CISO-Board conversations are falling short. I kind of mentioned this article as we were talking to Ben in the last segment, but here's the research.
Yeah, I mean, like I had said earlier, we're lucky to get 30 minutes. I mean, I would argue some CISOs are praying for 30 minutes in front of the board, right? Because maybe they get nothing at this point. Maybe it's all through the filter of the CEO or through the filter of a CIO. I don't know, right? So, a lot of CISOs are praying for 30 minutes in front of the board. I would argue that most probably don't get time in front of the board that's meaningful, right? At the end of the day. But I don't know. Do we have to earn it? I think we have to earn that seat, right? We have to push for it. We have to make sure that we're not speaking in the bits and bytes and we're speaking about business impact, right? We have to change the dynamic on how we're interacting with the C-suite and with the board of directors. So I think it's on us.
And I
Yeah,
think
but
part of that is having a discussion around the strategy of the organization, and for that C-suite to sit down and say, all right, let's talk about the strategy and the requirements that have been handed down from the board, right? Whether it's revenue, whatever that strategy is that now we, the executive team, are responsible for. And then having a discussion and saying, are we giving the right information to the board
Yep.
and showing them the right things? I don't know that enough C-suites have that discussion.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of it, I've been part of an organization where I had to kind of pave my own path. And for me, it wasn't about it. It was about making sure I can help other departments understand risk and mitigate risk. So I always took the selfless approach of, how can I help you? How can I make you, as a C-suite leader in my organization, look better, perform better, identify risk, mitigate risk? And eventually, that trust that I built became influence. That influence became a seat at the table, right? So you had to put in the elbow grease to influence, but it starts with trust. It's not about you. It's about everyone else. It's about the business, right? And I think that's the stance we need to be taking.
Ben said it in the last segment a little bit. You have to build your relationships, right, with the CEO and the CFO. And Jason, you've talked about this a lot, because guess who's in the board meeting every single time? The CEO and the CFO, right? So if you've built good relationships and you have the CEO and CFO as trusted advisors, right, with the security team, with the CISO, parts of, you don't have to be in front of the board maybe for more, right?
Yep.
You have to really then focus your time on the things that the board cares most about, right? Which is, again, Ben said it in the last segment, risk. Where are we from an AI perspective? What risks are out there? What should we be doing? What about my supply chain, right? He said, talk about those stories, right? Maybe that's all you get to talk about, but because the CEO and the CFO are there and you guys are aligned on what you're doing in the day-to-day, maybe that's enough time. But then you got to really concentrate that 30 minutes on the things that the board cares about most.
And it may be an uphill battle, guys, because I'm sure there's some CISOs out there saying, I don't get FaceTime with the CFO or CEO.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? Right? Well, guess what? It's influencing the sphere around them. It's building trust with the sphere around them. Because as you start building a brand within the organization, people talk. People are going to go to the CFO and say, hey, have you seen that new CISO here? Wow. Right? Blazing trails, helping me out.
Yep.
And once you get a brand, it's going to start elevating you within the organization. Then you'll get that seat at the table. You have to put in the work. It's not instant gratification in many instances. It's elbow grease. It's building trust. It's building influence.
Yep. Article 2. CISOs continue to struggle to strike the right risk balance. Again, these articles are very tied to the segment we just did. On purpose too, right? Because again, Ben talked about this. We need to start talking about risk. What are the risk areas that the board's concerned with? Then I can make sure I'm aligning what we're doing around those as part of that storytelling to the board to make sure I'm getting the right investment to resolve these risks.
I'm going to keep chirping around the soft skills here, right? Because it says in the article, 57% claim their communications channels with the line of business units are effective. Okay, maybe they're effective. Comm channels got the results. I got the information out the door. Are they effective? Do they actually influence how their organization sees cybersecurity? Big difference. Influence, trust, right? That's how you.
And by the way, 57% is still just a little.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
I mean, it's not that great.
No,
it's not that great.
I would argue that they're just looking to get the comm out the door, trying to be effective, versus actually influencing and building the trust we just talked about in the last article.
And part of that isn't even just influence. It's also it's the other direction. It's you as the CISO understanding what it is that is needed most for the business. So it isn't always just about, hey, we need to have more influence. We need a seat at the table so that we can say what we need more of. It's really, understanding what the business is so that you can align what you're doing to that.
Yeah.
So it's
I
a
think
lot of listening as well.
Yeah, that's the core of building the trust, though, right? Core of building the trust
Yeah.
is being effective in knowing the business and knowing the other business units and aligning with them. Right? It's again that selfless act.
Yep. When liability turns the CISO into the fall guy, we've talked about this topic as well, but it gets into some really interesting dynamics about this, right? In the myths of the seat at the table, right? We were talking about this in a little bit in the last segment too, right? Like we all want a seat at the table, but we're not there yet. Or we have this myth that we have the opportunity to even get a seat at that table.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, unfortunately, I'm starting to see that this is having an adverse effect on people wanting to get in the role. We've talked about articles around this before, right? I mean, just the legal stifles and the risk personally that folks are having, it's the law of unintended consequences. More and more folks do not want the role. So what happens from there? As this thing snowballs, are we going to start seeing a little bit less honest risk reporting? Are we going to start seeing things fly under the radar a little bit more? Are we going to have general counsel leading the way and saying, legally, we probably don't want to say this because it would affect us right? So, I mean, I don't know. It's tough. It's a snowball effect, and I'm a little scared.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you're saying that, I'm thinking MCI, WorldCom, Enron on the financial side, right? Do we go down a similar path from a cyber risk perspective because we don't have CISOs in the role because of all the related issues? We start watering everything down. We end up with a crisis similar to that on the financial side. This article also talks about the changes we need to make in this role, right?
Yeah.
Personal indemnification must be non-negotiable. We've talked about this on this show multiple times.
Yeah.
Right? The industry needs to redefine what success looks like. And CISOs have direct, unmediated access to the board, right? Which is the last two articles we just kind of talked about, right? Like those all sound great, by the way, because we've talked about all three of these in various, but the reality is, can we even get there?
No, because, and this is the part that kills me, because you're going to have business leaders who sit back and say, I don't want to have to do all that. I don't want to have to do all that for a CISO. Why don't I just transfer the risk to a third party? Let me get a third party in here. I'll transfer the risk over to them. I'll get a vCISO in the door, and we'll call it a day. You'll be surprised at the amount of clients that I see that do not have a cybersecurity leader. You're talking financial institutions that have like billions in assets that they manage, and their security leader is a technical VP in the technology networking organization. That's the highest level of cybersecurity leader they have. This is a $4 billion financial institution, right? This is where things are trending. There's no CISO at all. It's someone nestled not just below the CIO, but below the senior vice president of networking.
Yeah.
And they're not having risk conversations at the business level. They're talking about how many vulnerabilities they patch. All the things that we say not to do, it's swinging back.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part for me.
But I think for the CEOs that are listening, the third point that was made in this article about that unfettered access to the board, it goes back to what Jason said. The CISO has to earn it. You can't just give someone who doesn't understand the business that access, or they're just going to create chaos.
100%.
And so if you're a CEO listening, you need to take that CISO under your wing and help bring them up on that business.
100%.
And help them understand it and give them a voice, and also learn from them and understand what it means to do that. But I think building that CEO CISO relationship will help tremendously in having the message that's correct to the board at the right level about the resilience, about the risk posture, and in the questions. So I think building that relationship is just really, really important. So if you're a CEO listening, I hope you send a Valentine to the CISO or buy them a beer on St. Patrick's Day.
Absolutely. I mean, Summer, honestly, I have actual conversation. Like an example of what I had talked about before. You have someone who's kind of nestled in the IT department. They're the top cybersecurity person there. You know me, I'm always open. I'll sit back and say, oh, that's awesome. You lead the cybersecurity team. What type of metrics are you presenting to your CEO and the board? What are you talking about? What do you mean metrics to the board and the CEO? Oh, you're not quantifying risk within the organization. They're like looking at me like I'm crazy. Like I lost my mind.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it's just, I just take a step back and say, okay, that's, you know what I mean? And but my Business Security Weekly brain starts going mental at that point when I'm walking away, because it's just proving out all of the things we talk about here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, time for a new executive role. Who in the C-suite should own AI? Is it the CAIO?
Oh my Lord.
Let's add another one to the list that we have to compete with. Great.
Exactly. And what's funny is it lays out all the potential roles that could own AI.
Yeah.
The CISO's not on this list, by the way.
No.
Just so all you CISOs know, you have no chance of owning AI. Okay.
0.
It talks about the CIO.
Not according to HBR. Yeah.
No. All right. It's either, it could be the CIO, the COO, the CRO, by the way.
CFO.
Yeah. But remember what we said. Security, if you don't take on risk, you're going to report to the CRO. So the CRO is in here. It's all good. Yeah. CFO and CHRO and the CDO, which is data. Oh my gosh.
I listen, guys, I struggle with this because in no way, shape, or form do I want to see yet another C-level executive get added to the list of C-level executives in an organization. I can tell you CEOs are feeling the same way, because now they're going to have all of these nested C-levels, right? Because we talked about this. They're trying to pare down the amount of direct reports they have, not expand, right? And I struggle with the fact of, is AI something that requires ownership? Like when the internet was invented, did they have a chief internet officer because people were using the internet to do research? I don't know. I mean, I get it. It's disruptive. Right? Did they have a chief cloud officer when they started migrating everything to the cloud? I don't know. I'm struggling with this one, guys. I don't know if it affords a C-level executive.
I agree with you. And that's what this article's trying to do, is it says we have to move away from who owns AI to who owns which decisions. And why is that important, right? Because I don't think there is a single owner for AI. It impacts so many parts of the business. And what I think they're trying to say in this article is you got to look at the different decisions that need to be made from a security perspective, from a technology perspective, from a business efficiency perspective. There's decisions that are owned around AI. And so if you're going to hire a CAIO, they actually become almost like a coordinator. They coordinate these decisions across these different teams. But is that really a C-level role at that point? I don't know that you have a chief role, a C-suite role that's just coordinating with other C-suite executives. That just seems like a waste of time to me.
It does. I mean, it should fall under, one of the, logically, just CIO, it just seems logical to me. That would be a VP under the CIO, who is, like you said, the facilitator and the coordinator of AI initiatives.
Yeah.
And it does to me too, because there is a lot of technical, there's a lot of technical input that's needed to understand what AI is doing.
Yep.
So bucketing that under someone like a CHRO, that just seems like such a stretch.
Right.
Yeah.
But like we're saying, it's about taking a strategy that the company wants to achieve. Maybe AI is helping to enable that, just like cloud did, just like some other things do, brick and mortar building. And so now you have facilities people. So it does make sense to me as well to have it in one of the more technical tracks, CIO, CTO, CISO, whatever you're going to do there, and then have it be a VP level. In a certain level of business.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to see businesses doing, one of a few things. They're going to listen to the squeakiest wheel and they're going to give them the job. They're going to hand it to the most capable leader, or they're going to have this, AI management by committee, right? Which is spread across different executives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you know your leadership's working? It's when the team gets the recognition.
I love it. This is the epitome of selfless leadership, right? I mean, You guys have heard me say this a lot. My job as a leader is to teach my other leaders how to put me out of a job. That's my job.
Yes.
Right. I want to teach the folks who report to me how to put me out of a job, because then I'm on to my next biggest, best thing. And, it's funny for people who've worked with me for a while. I always take a look at them and they'll be like, you had it, didn't you? And they'll be like, and I go, yes. And they're like, your proud papa moment. Because I sit back and I just watch. I watch the team operate. And I get this certain smile on my face where I'll have a leader look at me and go, you got it, didn't you? Yeah, I get the proud papa moment. I love it.
It's a good measure for yourself as a leader.
Yeah.
If you're tracking how many times are people on your team getting recognized.
Right. Now,
it's a really good thing.
Yeah, we haven't done this in a while, Matt, but just some book recommendations. So Simon Sinek came out with a book called Leaders Eat Last. He actually studied the Marine Corps leadership, and he noticed when he was working with a general in the Marine Corps that why are all of the lowest ranking folks eating first and everybody else is standing back waiting? And it's that selfless leadership that it goes through. It's a great book. It's a great leadership book. It's a good read. So take a look at it. It's Leaders Eat Last.
It's a great book.
Yes. The psychology behind AI resistance, what CIOs and CISOs need to know.
Is it the psychology, or is it fear that they're going to lose jobs? Is it the misinformation that's out there right now? I mean, is there surveillance that they're thinking about? Oh my God, you're going to be able to surveil everything I do. I think transparency and communication from leaders within the organization, CIO, CISO, all of the above, about how AI is going to transform the business is important to get ahead of. So that way people are making their own thoughts around it. You're directing the narrative to what it's actually going to do for the organization.
I mean, just go to your LinkedIn, right? I mean, this morning when I logged into LinkedIn, the top news article was Meta considering laying off 20% of its workforce.
Right.
AI to blame, or whatever it said.
Sure. Right.
And so of course there's going to be fear around this. I mean, think this is a new industrial revolution that we're sitting here looking
100%.
at. And so, people are going to be, and you're going to have the early adopters. You're going to have the people who charge in with excitement. You're going to have the people who are on the complete opposite spectrum. But this is also about that leadership that you need to have. So this goes back to that.
It's funny. Super recent story just hit me, right? A family member had an operation, and their operation was 100% robotic assisted. So the doctor basically sat behind a virtual reality screen and did the operation with robots, right? And the first thing that came out of my mouth as I was speaking to family members about it was, it won't be too long before AI is running that entire operation. In the reactive communication back to me was, does that mean there's not going to be any more doctors? No, that's not what I was saying, right? What I'm saying is tactical things like this operation, they could become tactical. They could be with oversight of a doctor, right? Built and controlled by AI, run by AI. If it's something super repeatable and something that the robots can do, I could see a day where AI could drive that operation.
And think of what you could do with that brain power of, if you don't have to have a doctor sitting in a 12-hour surgery or 17-hour surgery or even a 2-hour surgery, that doctor could be focused on curing the problem that they're having the surgery
on
for.
Research, exactly.
So I love that.
100%. So that's such a recent story for me, but the reaction is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Automatically, does that mean there's going to be no more doctors? No, that's not what that means.
Just doctors will be doing different things.
That's right.
And again, what this article is trying to get to the point of is, you're going to see resistance until the employees understand, like, what's the benefit to me, to the company, to everything. Look, there is going to be a big time efficiency play here, which means maybe I don't need as many employees, but let's be honest about it, right? But other employees are going to be more efficient, be able to do more things, drive better outcomes for the business. Remember, businesses are here to make money, right? So revenue and margins and reducing costs are parts of what boards talk about, folks, right?
Yes.
So these are very important things. And if you look at a P&L statement, and I've run P&Ls, What's your biggest number one cost?
Human capital.
Human capital, people.
Yeah.
It's us. It's humans. We're expensive. Salaries, benefits, all the things that happen, right? So this is going to happen whether we want to or not. What I think this article is trying to do is you've got to have these conversations. You got to start talking about this, being transparent and understanding the potential impacts of this across your organization, because you're going to get some resistance because it's fear. There's a lot of fear right now, but there's also a lot of upside benefit. So it's funny. I was talking about this, I think yesterday. I was saying to somebody, I'm like, I'm glad I'm kind of towards the end of my career, because if I'm in my early parts of the career, I would be really thinking about, okay, how do I shift my career to be in a better position with all this new AI technology coming in? I don't think I have to worry about it that much per se. Because I'm still a little smarter than the AI. I mean, one day I won't be, but right now I'm just a slightly smarter than it, just a little bit.
Yeah, but when you think about that, Matt, think about it the other way around. Like when we were early in our careers, cybersecurity was starting.
I know.
Right? When I was in school, when I was in high school, there was no cybersecurity. There wasn't, I mean, the role didn't even exist except maybe a little bit. And think of the excitement that we have been through. So in a way, I'm also a little jealous of the people that are starting because they have this path that's so cool to get down. And I'm not at the end yet either, so it is still exciting for me. But I say to my kids all the time, even the one that's in college, don't stress. Your job may not even exist right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Summer, because
it's so cool.
I remember back in the day, like my early to mid 20s, just digging in, and the closest thing I could find was information and assurance at like Norwich University. That was like the closest I could get to cyber, right? True cyber. So yeah, you're right.
Did not exist in 1996 when I graduated with my master's in computer engineering. It was computer engineering, folks. It was not cybersecurity, anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were still calling it information security back then. We didn't, we coined the cyber phrase way later than that. But you're right, though, Summer. It was exciting because we were learning as we go. Kids with the right skill sets will do that. But you also, like my son's graduating in May with his master's in mechanical engineering. The good news for him is AI can assist him, but you're not going to necessarily replace certain skill sets, right?
Yeah.
That's what we have to think about. And that's the transition I think we have to teach our kids and our grandchildren. I'm not there yet, but someday I will be, right? On what are the degrees, what are the skill sets that they're going to need to grow up in this new world that will be AI enabled. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
For leaders, you're going to have a workforce you need to transition, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not in it just for the layoffs, right, and just to cut weight, you're going to have to plan out a transition in skills, because there are going to be skills that get eliminated. So what are you going to do with that workforce, right? You have to think about that.
Yep. Yeah. How do I transition these into the future roles that we want them to be in?
Because listen, you may have somebody who's in their early 30s. They're not ready to stop working yet, and they could be a great resource in your organization. You start thinking of that transition plan.
Yep. All right. One last article, the communication lesson that changed my career. It's not what you say, it's what others hear. This was a really interesting article from a communication perspective. And being able to it's kind of long. It's a little long, but I think it's really interesting in understanding some of the different paradigms you have to encounter and deal with.
I laughed so hard because I read the article and I just said, wow, my personal board of directors just got outsourced to AI.
Yeah.
These are the type of things I used to, because you guys know, I have my own little personal board of directors that I talk to, and I talk about communication styles, and I talk about the way I communicated and kind of didn't get the result I wanted. And I bounce it off of these, exceptional leaders and successful people that I've gotten the opportunity to meet and build relationships over the course of my career. And I read this, I'm like, wow, that just got outsourced to AI.
All gets outsourced. Listen, everything's going to get outsourced to AI.
I'll take the human approach all day long, because there's nothing for me that beats that.
I was going to nominate this article for the AI assisted of the week.
Yeah, see, I did it.
It is assisted.
I did.
Yes, it's assisted. So. It's for sure. I think every article almost is assisted
now. It seems super personal.
Yeah. But this is the point, Jason. The skill that humans need are the soft skills that the AI will not have. AI is not going to understand emotional intelligence and some of those things. This is one of the skill sets. And this is what scares me a little bit about the upcoming generation. They're so used to the digital technology. They'll text, they'll email, they'll TikTok, they'll do whatever. But it's these interpersonal skills and these communication skills. These are the skills that are going to transcend the AI-enabled world.
100%. And the biggest piece for me is examples and stories. The AI is not going to be able to regurgitate real stories back to me.
Yeah.
The emotion that was behind it, because that other person experienced it. Now, to your point of the younger generation, it's exactly why I'm trying to get my son to be a caddy this coming summer. So he can have conversations all day long. He loves golf. He's been playing golf since he could probably walk. And he's of the age now, so I'm trying to get him a caddy role.
You learn about business. You learn a lot of terrible jokes.
That's right, which is perfectly fine.
But it's the interaction. Exactly. It's the social interaction. It's the communication.
That's right.
That's going to be so important moving forward.
Right. So that's that. We as leaders of our families need to be doing that for our children. Just putting it out.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Jason. As a person, you know, in your family, you have to be the leader that fosters 100%. This. You have to raise resilient kids.
That's right. That's right.
To be able to be in this world that's going to have AI.
He won't be able to walk around that golf course with his face in his phone, right? Because he's going to have to. He's going to have to be doing the job and communicating. And hey, listen. Whoever gets him as a caddy is going to be lucky because the kid is really, really good.
Awesome.
It's awesome. Thank you both for joining me today. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. Next week's RSA conference, but don't worry, we got a pre-recorded Say Easy, Do Hard coming. So we'll see you guys all again in 2 weeks on Business Security Weekly.